This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Brett Baer. What appears to be the most serious attempt at ending the standoff that has resulted in the partial government shutdown is underway at this moment. President Obama is hosting a bipartisan group of congressional leaders at the White House. It occurs on day 2 of a shutdown that has featured more rancor on Capitol Hill, landmark and event closings stretching all the way to France, more than 800,000 furloughed federal employees, and a potential public relations nightmare for both sides. We have Fox team coverage tonight. Mike Emanuel is at the Capitol with the finger pointing and next steps. James Rosen here in our bureau with who stays and who goes during the shutdown. Molly Henneberg on the Washington Mall with images that threaten to become the face of the shutdown. But we begin with Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry, where the action is right now at that meeting. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, Brett. Lots of action, but no real breakthrough because White House aides are already signaling the president is not going to compromise at this meeting with congressional leaders. Instead, he's waiting for Republicans to fold. So this could just be about optics, getting the leaders to sit down with him, make it look like they're trying to make progress. Meanwhile, in an interview with CNBC, the president said that Wall Street should be more worried that the U.S. might actually default, in comments that might rattle world markets.
I think this time's different. I think they should be concerned. And I had a chance to speak to some in the financial industry who came down for their typical trip. And I told them that it is not unusual for Democrats and Republicans to disagree. That's the way the founders designed our government. Democracy's messy. But when you have a situation in which a faction is willing potentially to default on U.S. government obligations, then we are in trouble.
Those dramatic comments came after President Obama called in titans of Wall Street to help pressure Republicans by spreading the message the next big deadline, October 17th, when the government reaches the debt ceiling, could do far more damage to the economy than the October 1st shutdown.
So we really haven't seen this before, and I'm not anxious to be a part of the process that witnesses it.
Yet after days of resisting direct talks with congressional leaders, aides say the president is still not willing to give Republicans anything and is basically just telling them to reopen the government with no strings attached.
He's not willing to negotiate over Republican demands to collapse the world economy if they don't do away with affordable health insurance for the American people.
Republican Lindsey Graham slammed the president for not getting his hands dirtier and noted that earlier this week, former White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs said on MSNBC his former boss should sit back and watch the congressional dysfunction.
Well, that is the dumbest advice in the world if you believe the government shutdown is compromising our national security. Where is our commander-in-chief at a time we need him?
Graham pointed to jarring comments today by the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, when he was asked if the nation is safe.
I don't feel that I can make such a guarantee to the American people, and it will be much more difficult to make such a guarantee as each day of this shutdown goes by.
Clapper suggested about 70% of intelligence analysts have been furloughed.
Is the country less safe now, or is this James Clapper trying to scare people to put pressure on Republicans?
Look, I would just point you to the testimony of the head of the DNI. What we have said.
That up. Are we less safe?
Well, I'm not the person charged with making that assessment, so I would refer you to the.
Does the Commander-in-Chief believe that we are less safe?
The Commander-in-Chief believes that we ought to open the government, and that there are bad impacts.
Now, James Clapper went on to say that as each day goes by, the chance of a terror attack, the jeopardy basically increases, which led Lindsey Graham to say those comments scared the heck out of him. It's clear that when you put those comments together with what the president said about Wall Street, top officials are trying to grab attention and put more pressure on Congress, Brett.
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. We'll head back to the White House if any of these lawmakers come out and speak, or we hear from the president after this meeting. Live here on Fox. Events are often defined by images, and pictures of some members of America's rapidly decreasing greatest generation kept away from the memorial to their own bravery would be nothing short of a public relations nightmare. Correspondent Molly Henneberg shows us what happened instead.
For the second day in a row, World War II veterans would not be denied a chance to see the World War II memorial. These aging vets were flown in on honor flights and, along with lawmakers, moved the barricades and went inside. Several chuckled at the idea that a government shutdown could have kept them out.
We were going to fight like hell.
To get inside here?
Yes. It's worth it.
You know, this is wide open. How can they close something that's wide open? You walk right up to it.
Some lawmakers showed up, as they say they always do, to greet veterans from their home states.
This is their memorial, and they're entitled to be here to experience it.
But for these guys, we would all be speaking German.
There's Missouri veterans here today. No politics.
But that got a bit of a mixed reaction from veterans.
I appreciated the courage of our Congress people as they made a way for us.
You meet the senators or representatives that are out here, and they're the ones that are causing the damn problem to start with.
Elsewhere in D.C., at closed national monuments, guards made sure the public stayed away. But some visitors said they had to pay their respects.
Put down, his name was White, so I got to see that. So.
The National Park Service said it allowed the veterans into the World War II memorial because it considered this a First Amendment demonstration. The White House, which previously declined to intervene on behalf of the veterans, praised that decision while blaming congressional Republicans.
When you shut down the government, you shut down a lot of services.
But at the end of the day, these veterans say they got what they came for. Today, the Republican National Committee offered to pay to keep the World War II memorial open for 1 month and challenged the Democratic Party to contribute as well. Democrats called it a, quote, silly stunt. Brett?
Molly Henneberg live on the Mall. Molly, thank you. While more than 800,000 federal workers have been furloughed, employees deemed necessary are still on the job. Tonight, Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen tells us who makes those decisions and how.
There's no question that essential functions, some of them continue.
But is a daily dose of Jay Carney essential? He certainly thinks so.
We obviously believe it's important that the American people be apprised of what's happening here at the White House.
In the shutdowns of 1995 and 96, workers who stayed on the job were deemed essential, those furloughed non-essential. Today's kinder, gentler language refers to those accepted and not accepted from a shutdown.
Each agency has to put together a plan that they submit to OMB, identifying which employees they have who they believe are essential for the safety of life and the protection of property.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development, for example, submitted this plan, which retains about 4% of HUD's workforce of 8,700. The Central Management Office keeps 9 of its 68 employees, a retention rate of 13%. But Ginnie Mae, the mortgage agency, keeps 43 of its 108 workers, a retention rate of 40%. HUD's Inspector General keeps nearly 10% of his staff, the agency's CFO 8%. Retaining the largest number of employees is HUD's housing unit with 68 accepted workers. Still, only 2% of that office's 3,000 employees. The Environmental Protection Agency deemed 93% of its staff, to use the old terminology, non-essential. Such decisions raise natural questions in the minds of many Americans about whether Uncle Sam can manage, if pressed to do so, to get by on a lot less.
Government doesn't do a great job of measuring things like efficiency and productivity of its workforce. There's also the factor that as the budget deficit grows bigger, there's just a growing sense that government is very big, and a lot of people question whether they're getting what they're paying for out of it.
We should be thinking about moving national parks to state governments or setting them up as independent nonprofit trusts so that the government shutdowns don't affect them.
In all, nearly 150 agencies had to submit shutdown plans to OMB. So where are employees being kept on in a big way? The Department of Homeland Security, whose workforce of 231,000 employees boasts a retention rate, Brett, of 86% in this shutdown climate.
Did you get an email from Jay Carney on that opening line?
I'll go back to my desk and check.
Check it out. All right, James, thank you. Playing the blame game has become the favorite activity of both sides in the standoff. Chief Congressional correspondent Mike Emanuel tells us tonight very little else is getting done on Capitol Hill.
The ayes have it.
House lawmakers passed a bill to allow the Washington, D.C. government to function. They're also due to consider other targeted funding bills to make sure veterans receive their benefits and national parks and monuments are reopened. The bills won majority support last night, but failed on a procedure that required them to win 2/3 backing. Republicans also added bills for the National Institutes of Health to fund medical research and the National Guard.
We ought to be working as hard as we can to open up the government
in all the areas that we agree on.
In the Senate, Republican leader Mitch McConnell called on Democrats to end the shutdown he says they created.
But in the end, they got their shutdown, which they apparently think will help them politically. And they held on to their absolutist position on Obamacare regardless of the consequences for American families.
Today, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid called and sent this letter to Speaker John Boehner asking that he take up the Senate's straight stopgap government funding bill and offered to appoint conferees to work out a long-term budget deal once the government is reopened.
My message to him was very simple. We have to stop playing these foolish games that keep coming to us from the other side of the Capitol. This is not about him or me, about scoring points for one side or the other, name-calling, like the villain of villains.
A spokesman for Boehner says Washington is shuttered because Democrats refuse to even talk about fairness for all Americans under Obamacare. Quote, offering to negotiate only after Democrats get everything they want is not much of an offer. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi also sent a letter to Boehner.
We're going to sign this letter to Speaker Boehner asking that we have a vote on a clean funding resolution immediately so that government functioning can resume and Americans can move on with their lives.
House GOP leaders disagree.
This whole notion of just pass what we've demanded is somehow going to make the problem go away is profoundly naive.
A number of Republicans tell me a solution could be getting rid of the medical device tax, which would enjoy some bipartisan support as something that could be done to end this conflict. It would not stop Obamacare, but it would kill a tax. Brett?
Mike Emanuel live on the Hill. Mike, thank you. And again, we're watching the White House to see if anyone comes out after that meeting. We'll bring it to you live here. Payroll company ADP says U.S. businesses added 166,000 jobs last month. That signals only a modest improvement in hiring, and Wall Street was not too happy about that. According to analysts, the Dow lost 59, the S&P 500 dropped 1, the Nasdaq fell 3. Up next, what Republicans are calling the Obamacare waiting room of the future. But first, here's what some of our Fox affiliates across the country are covering tonight. Fox 30 in Jacksonville, Florida has a bomb scare at a local airport. A man told security screeners he had an explosive device in his backpack. That device was a hoax. Fox 29 in Philadelphia with a court ruling that convicted child abuser and former Penn State assistant football coach Jerry Sandusky should not get a new trial. And this is the live look at Atlanta from our Fox affiliate WAGA. The big story there tonight is the court appearance of a man accused of slapping a stranger's crying baby during an airplane flight. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.